Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 3. This was a request. Apologize. Forgot the name. Victoria Cross for Valor. I was just telling someone about the first episode and how the one gentleman got his leg kablooied off, and still found it important that paperwork comes first before getting the leg looked at. Well, the stub. And I gotta say, one thing that never popped in my mind is I never heard that the gentleman was crying and screaming, "Oh my goodness, my leg, my leg." Because that's what I would have been doing. He lost his leg. Okay. Video.
In Holland in 1944, Major Robert Kane had been tested twice, but worse was to come.
What?
This was the picture at Arnhem. 40 miles to the south, the Second Army, seen here in red, was bogged down. And with reinforcements unable to get through, the men holding the north end of the bridge were soon to surrender. Kane and the remaining airborne troops were ordered to pull back 3 miles west to the village of Oosterbeek. A horseshoe of defences was then erected in the hope of holding off the Germans until the Second Army could break through. So, picture the scene. Try to put yourself in the head of someone who was here that day. You were part of the largest airborne assault ever, but your mission has been a complete failure. That's the first thing. You were supposed to have been here 2 days, but you've been here for 4. You landed with 12,000 men, but at this point only 3,900 are left. So it's almost certain that you've watched close friends get killed. You've been fighting pretty much non-stop for those last 4 days, so it's unlikely you've had any sleep. You've no food. You're low on...
You gonna throw in anything nice? Like, oh, and then they came across a bunch of women who've showed on their boobs. Oh, that's great. You're just going to keep hammering in the terrible things? Oh, this guy.
Ammunition. And the Germans have cut off the water supply to the village that you're holed up in. And there's no way out of the village because you're surrounded on all sides by tanks and artillery and mortars and flamethrowers and 6,000 German troops. And then someone gets a radio working, and you find out that the Second Army, which was supposed to have been here 2 days earlier, is still 5 days away. Imagine how that must have felt. That sense of desolation and isolation, that sense of, well, we're going to die here.
He's not very good with bringing good news. He really likes the bad stuff, doesn't he?
To make matters even worse, the RAF was dropping vital supplies of food and ammunition at prearranged landing zones,
Germans were getting
not realising they'd been overrun by Germans.
Yeah.
The British soldiers in Oosterbeek actually watched almost 90% of the drops fall into enemy hands. So the Germans must have felt optimistic, but they were reckoning without Robert Kane. His job was to defend the tip of the horseshoe by the river. This was the short straw, because if the Germans came through here, they'd cut everyone off, and the Brits would be finished. That night, an eerie silence descended on the bridge. Everyone knew that meant the British holding the north end had finally surrendered, and as a result, the Germans could now turn all their attention to the siege of Oosterbeek. What's more, as the
Oh, that wasn't me. That was the commercial that burped. Okay, back to the video. My nose itches.
What's more, as the British forces grew weaker, the Germans were being reinforced with men and equipment from home. Equipment that included their most formidable battle weapon.
Slingshots. Nope, it wasn't slingshots.
The Tiger tank was the king of the German divisions, the biggest armoured vehicle they'd ever made. It weighed 57 tons. Its armour plating was 4 inches thick. The shells it fired were from an 88mm gun. It could blow anything to Kingdom Come with complete impunity. And a herd of them was headed straight for Kane's position. On the second day of the siege, a Tiger tank rumbled down the street at the top of that bank over there. Now, Major Kane was down here on this piece of waste ground, armed with a Piat gun. Now, British troops hated these things. It was a botched piece of design. It was heavy, it was ungainly, it was inaccurate, and the shell it fired was virtually useless against all known sorts of German armour. And those were the good things about it. The bad thing was trying to cock it. You had to stand on the end like that and then pull it up to tighten the spring, which isn't so bad now because the spring's 60 years old and quite weak. But back then that would often take 2 guys. And then, once it was done, you had to seat the shell, which meant feeding it in like this. It's immensely fiddly even today. So what it must have been like when you had 50 tons of Tiger tank bearing down on you. Isn't bear thinking about. Kane managed to load the Piat by himself and take up position behind a little hut. He waited for the Tiger to be 30 yards away, took aim and fired. It was a good shot. The shell went right underneath the tank and blew up, causing no damage whatsoever. All it did was alert the crew inside to the fact that he was there. A shell from the tank's 88mm gun blew the hut to smithereens, but at the last second, Kane grabbed his Piat gun and ran for cover past the tank's machine gun to a laundry. Now, once he got there, he reloaded the Piat and got ready to fire it again. The second shot was as good as the first, but the effect was exactly the same as well. Nothing. So the tank turned its gun again and fired again. And this time it killed Kane's spotter, Lieutenant Ian Meitler. Now, at this point, a sane man would have got out of there. But you've got to remember, Kane had lost 100 of his men by this stage. He wasn't in the mood for getting out. So, as the dust cleared, no one could quite believe their eyes, because he was lying in completely open ground, facing down a Tiger tank.
I was close enough to see exactly what happened.
I think he altered his position to kneeling, and we can see in the distance a tank.
I was absolutely certain he was going to die there.
Kept on shouting, "Load, load," and firing at the tank.
He fired for a third time, and this time his shell hit the Tiger's only Achilles heel. He blew one of its tracks off, immobilizing it.
And you could see the track of the tank come away and lob on its sides.
Kane had no time to celebrate, though, because almost immediately another Tiger rolled into view on the road up there. He dived behind the wall of the laundry again, reloaded his Piat again, and then stepped out to take a shot at it. But he pulled the trigger a fraction of a second too soon. So the shell clipped the wall of the laundry and blew up just a few feet in front of his face.
There was a flash, and he immediately fell over.
And it was horrifying. When I got to him, his face was black, but totally black, and with little spots of blood all the way around. What, 30, 40, 50, whatever it was. And he was saying, I'm blind, I can't see.
So several of his men carried him away to the copse, 10, 15 yards away.
I stayed with him no more than 6 or 7 paces, I shouldn't think, holding his hand.
It seemed like he was finished. But 45 minutes later, he was back. His sight had returned, and that was enough. The shrapnel wounds he would cope with.
And this
I'm wondering if he just got like maybe like the smoke or maybe some kind of dirt or something like that in his eyes, and it was just a giant flash, and it just, you know, maybe damaged his eyes a little bit, you know, the flash or something. And then after some time, his vision just started to come back. But damn.
Chap came out of the copse with his face blackened, and he got down immediately on the pier gum.
I was staggered, utterly staggered.
I thought, well, he must be a very brave man to be knocked out, probably, and then come back and take up the same position and still hit tanks.
I couldn't understand why such a brave man didn't say, well, I've had enough. He'd done his lot and still kept going.
But it was still firing when we left.
By the end of that day, day 2 of the siege,
You almost at that point think that he's willing to die right now. I mean, to do that, you have to accept that it's a possibility. But if you're watching it, you know, if you're one of those two guys, you're watching it, and you have to think, well, we can't save him, because mentally he's going to die there stopping them. So if we can get safe, we're going to get safe. We got to do what we got to do, and hopefully we'll be alive after this battle's over and we can collect his body. That's kind of the mentality you have to take when you see someone like that who's just turned into a one-man army.
Kane, according to eyewitnesses, had destroyed 3 tanks, and no one had ever done that before. He had begun to win his VC.
He better not have died in battle. This better not be one of those sad things. I don't want that. Does he die? Don't tell me. Wink. Is he alive? You didn't win. I don't know what that means. You didn't win.
This lump of bronze is only big enough to produce 80 more medals. But there's no need to panic about it running out just yet, because over the years it's become harder and harder to win a Victoria Cross. In the early days, simply whirling your sword at a heathen was often enough, but that changed toward the end of the First World War, and the figures back this up. In World War I, 634 medals were awarded, but in World War II, that dropped to just 182. The bar had been raised to an almost impossible height.
During the Arnhem Battle, a glider pilot called Lieutenant Mike Dauncey found himself defending a sector very close to where Robert Kane was. Here's the report. It says the position was continually attacked by superior forces of enemy tanks and infantry. On 3 occasions, the enemy overran the sector, necessitating a counterattack. Dauncey led each sortie with such determination that the positions were regained with heavy loss to the enemy. In the face of heavy small arms and mortar fire, he personally attacked machine gun posts with complete disregard for his own safety. The next day, the Germans attacked again with tanks and self-propelled guns. This time, Dauncey lost the sight of one eye. In spite of the pain, though, he refused to be evacuated. And then on the next day, they came back with tanks again. His men withdrew, and he was left alone, facing down a tank. He threw a gammon bomb through its hatch and blew it up. Now, for this, he was recommended for a VC, but they turned him down. That's how hard it had become to win one.
Wow.
Since the end of the Second World War to the present day, only 11 VCs have been won, and this creates a problem. The fewer VC winners there are, the greater the burden of living in its spotlight.
I'd sooner have back with me the pals, my buddies, my comrades back with me, rather than any medal.
In 1951, Private William Speakman was part of a battalion of the Black Watch Regiment defending a hilltop in Korea. The hill was attacked by 6,000 Chinese soldiers, and with the Black Watch troops outnumbered by 12 to 1, the situation looked bleak. But as the hill was about to be overrun, Speakman appeared like a 6'4" human grenade launcher.
And I thought, well, all this stuff has been done. We've primed them. I might as well use the bloody things, you know. So that's it. And we went up there and we just did it.
10 times he went back for more grenades, and then when they ran out, he lobbed beer bottles and ration tins at the Chinese, anything he could get his hands on. Eventually the attack was broken, and Speakman was a hero, but he found it hard to cope with the attention the VC brought. He told one reporter that the medal made him feel like a freak in a freak show.
Sometimes it gets a little bit too much. Not sometimes, a lot of the time it gets too much. People try to do something for you. They're trying to say thank you in their own little way. They say, well, tell me what happened. You either don't want to, or sometimes you just say, well, no, I've forgotten all about it now. And that's the truth. It's a bit overwhelming for an ordinary person.
The difficulty with a Victoria Cross or an award of that standing being awarded is you were just beginning to get over the shock and the horror of what you've been through. And then you're given this award and you have to relive it all over again, probably for the rest of your life, because people will be asking you about it for the rest of your life. They're just incredible people. I'm being soft about them, because they were tough men in their day. But when I first started being involved with the association, there were 450 alive, and now there are only 15. So there's been a lot of sadness. But we've had some incredible times together.
The last two VCs, both posthumous, were won in the Falklands War 21 years ago. And the reason it's been such a long time is quite straightforward.
Modern warfare with remote-control weapon systems arguably separates you from the enemy in a way that hasn't happened in past wars.
Yeah.
It gives you an idea of how rarely you can justify a VC and how infrequently the opportunity, and it doesn't need an opportunity, the opportunity to win a VC comes past your door.
In a way, though, you could say it's better because, this is going to sound stupid, but please go with me. War is safer now because we're not running out in the front lines like we were, World War I, World War II. But the weapons that we use are far worse. So maybe that was stupid.
The days of soldiers sticking their heads above the parapet and taking out half the enemy with nothing but a fruit knife are gone. The days of soldiers like this man, Gurkha rifleman Lakiman Gurung.
In Burma, on May the 13th, 1945, Gurung was manning the most forward post of his platoon when 200 Japanese soldiers attacked the position. Grenades were thrown into his trench, which Rifleman Gurung snatched up and threw back. Unfortunately, the third grenade exploded in his hand, blowing off his fingers, shattering his right arm, and severely wounding him in the face, body, and right leg. For the next 4 hours, wave after wave of fanatical attacks were thrown in by the enemy, and all were repulsed. Even though Gurung, alone in his trench, had to load and fire his rifle using only his left hand. Of the 87 enemy dead counted in the vicinity after the battle, 31 lay in front of Gurung's position. 31.
So this is part 3. We're going to finish this up, part 4. But, damn, this has been good. I have not heard one story about a previous winner that I'm like, eh. They're all kind of like, what the hell? Pretty good. Pretty amazing. There's some ballsy people out in the world. All right. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Have a good night.